Hello everyone, it's Robin the Delta Crafter and I want to thank you for joining me for another video on my YouTube channel. I don't know about you, but sometimes I want to just have some plain white flowers. But how do you make them pop on a background? We're going to talk about it today. We're going to be using the Lovely Layers Iris dies from Honeybee Stamps. Lovely Layers lives up to its name. I've used some of the dies from this collection before in some videos. I'll try to link some below, but the layering part is very true on these dies. But the layers are actually what give these dies such great detail and dimension. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to die cut our parts and pieces. I'm going to be using pretty much all of the pieces to this set today, and you can see that by the side, this is a 4¼ by 5½ piece of paper. So you can see right there just by scale just how large this flower is going to be, which is another thing that I love about many of the Lovely Layer pieces in the Lovely Layer collection. These are large flowers and they give you can see a lot of the detail because of the size of the flowers. So when I'm cutting dies that I think I'm going to be using or making more than one, I try to make a kind of a grid with the tape. And in this instance, I'm using mint tape from scrapbook.com. That way, when I make a grid, I can just peel the dies up and then replace them on another piece of paper and cut them again. It kind of makes quick work. But in this instance, I'm only going to use one flower, so I really didn't need to make a grid. I did go ahead and cut out all of the stems and leaves. I could have cut these stems and leaves out of green cardstock, but I wanted to get more of a realistic kind of look for those parts and pieces. So I went ahead and cut them out because I'm going to color them in with ink blending later on. So I went ahead and placed both pieces on my Spellbinders Platinum die set. This is using the universal plate system. You guys, this universal plate system is one of my faves, and I'll be sure to link that in the description box for you below. It makes such easy, quick work of die cutting. You want to poke out all those little parts that kind of remain behind and get ready for your coloring. Honeybee does a great job of having guides on their website for how to color and layer their Lovely Layer dies. So I'm showing you here where I have the guide pulled up on my iPad, and I'm going to set that off camera just in front of me so I can use that as I go in and start to ink up this flower. So this video is all about white flower. So I've already cut the flower out of white cardstock. But how am I going to make this flower stand out? Well, we're going to add some shading with some gray. Now, I know that may seem a little counterintuitive because gray seems to be a little bit of a darker color. But what it's going to do is it's going to give us a shadow kind of a look and effect on our flower. I'm showing you the brushes that I'm using, which I'm going to use about 3 different brushes throughout all of the inking. But for the shadowing, I'm going to use this smaller brush here. This is the Waffle Flower Shader Brush in size 0. I have a set of these. And these really small brushes give you an opportunity to put down just a little bit of color. It's hard to see there because of the lighting. But just a little bit of color in the smallest, lightest places. Smallest places, also with a very light hand. So I'm just going in with that shader brush. And again, using my guide, which is off camera, and adding some color to some parts and pieces of these layers of the flower. So I'm just going to kind of layer them on top of each other, kind of test them out and kind of see where the coloring is and see how I like it if I want to add any more in some other places. Now, because I'm using that guide, which again is off camera on my iPad, I can tell that this layer of the flower has a little bit of the center of the flower, like where the stamens and the pistils are. So I'm going to bring in some lemon whip. By the way, I'm using all Pinkfresh Studio inks for these flowers. I love the lightness of these particular colors that I'm using. So the gray is Misty Coast, and then I just added some lemon whip to the inside of that layer, where again it's going to be the inside of the flower, the throat of the flower, where the pistil and the stamens are. And then I'm also going to bring in some sunshine because I want a little bit of a darker type of yellow to kind of poke through and be seen once you see through those layers as the layers begin to stack up. This flower is going to end up being 5 layers thick, and that again, that's one of the things that I love about the Lovely Layers collection is all the layers and detail that they add that comes through by adding all of the layers together is stunning to me, and I can't find anything else on the market that even competes. So again, I'm going to layer that up and test it out and see where I need to add some more color, some lighter color, some darker yellow, and go from there. So once I've gotten all my layers inked up with at least the first layer of ink, now it's time to flip them over and do some assembling. So I'm going to use my Barely Arts glue with that super fine needle tip on it, and that's going to allow me to get into some of these smaller spaces. Because there are so many layers, some of these parts and pieces of the flowers are very thin and fine. So you want to have a glue that's going to give you a small bead of, the nozzle is going to give you a small bead of glue so you don't have glue oozing out everywhere and potentially ruining your creation. So I'm just going to go through and glue up all the layers and get them all layered together. And once I do, I'm going to put an acrylic block on top of everything and apply some pressure and allow it all to adhere nicely while that glue dries up. So we're going to move on to working on the stems. So I'm bringing in this clear sticky mat from scrapbook.com. This is actually made to go inside of a Misty, but I'm using it here to hold these smaller, daintier stem pieces while I go ahead and ink them up. This is a less expensive option instead of some of the more expensive grip mats and things that are out there. But I like having this because one, it's versatile. But two, it does what I need it to do. So again, I'm using some Pinkfresh Studio inks. I'm going to come in with Grassy Knoll first, and then I'm going to finish up by darkening things in with some key lime. So I'm going to color everything with this Grassy Knoll. And the reason why I wanted to use white cardstock instead of green cardstock is because I want to get this kind of uneven look. If you look at flowers in nature, by the way, I'm also a gardener, so I'm growing a flower patch, cut flower patch this year for the very first time, and so I'm really paying attention to how things look in nature. They're not even. The coloring is not even. It's light in some places, dark in some places. And that's really the look that I wanted to go for. So by inking up the stem from white cardstock, you can see I have a very uneven kind of look, and that's exactly what I like. I took that further by adding that key lime in just a few spots on the stems. So it's a quick cleanup of this sticky mat by just adding some stamp cleaner and using a microfiber cloth and just wiping that ink away. And now it's perfectly clean and ready for its next use. I'm grabbing that Barely Arts glue again and just assembling all the parts and pieces of the stems and leaves. Again, I'm using the guide that is off screen. It's on my iPad in front of me to kind of show me where all the pieces should go. I love that Honeybee even adds layers to their stems so that they continue the effect all the way down through the leaves and stems. So now we've got our completely assembled flower and our completely assembled stems and leaves. And now that everything is together, I'm looking at some of the spaces and places, and I'm deciding to add just a little bit more of that Misty Coast gray ink to some of the places where some of the overlapping occurs. I'm using a light hand to add just a little bit more color to make this flower pop. So now we're going to move on to creating our card. Now, like I've said, this is a large flower. You can use it on a smaller card, but I decided to use this on a 5x7 card. So I'm going to bring in the Garden Lattice set, also from Honeybee Stamps. This is an older die set. This might be 3 years old, but it is a staple that I strongly suggest everybody have in their stash. It does come in two parts. You can buy them together or you can buy them separately. I'm using both parts today. I've die cut that off camera and I've assembled the more dainty piece onto the stronger, more bold piece and off camera. And now I'm just adding those to my 5x7 card base. So here's a quick card making tip. Keep a stash of sentiments already cut and in my case foiled in your stash. These are the perfect sentiments from Pinkfresh Studio and I have them foiled in gold and silver. While I'd love to do this on days when I don't have a whole lot going on or I don't have a lot of crafty things I need to do, I'll just pop on a movie and get a lot of foiled sentiments and the layers cut and created and keep them in my stash. Again, I reach for this often, guys, when I need a quick card. So I pulled out a sentiment of just a note and a couple of the layering pieces. I'm going to layer those up using that same Barely Arts glue and going to put those under an acrylic block and let them adhere real quick. So we're going to move on to assembling our card now. Again, this is a large flower, so it's going to take up a lot of the space on my card, which I absolutely love. But notice that because I'm using a white card with a white lattice background, adding that shading is really going to make this flower stand out and pop from all of the rest of the white in the card. I've figured out my alignment and I brought in a piece of press and seal to pick everything up, and I'm going to add some glue to the back of the stems to get them down. Keep in mind that because of the lattice work, this is a very uneven background. So you're going to want to make sure that you have some good amount of adhesive on there to make sure everything adheres nicely to your card panel. I'm going to use my tweezers. I've added some of that Barely Arts glue to the back of my iris. I'm going to use my tweezers to bring that in and place it where I think I want it to be. And because of the work time that I have with that glue, I can wiggle around a little bit and kind of figure out exactly where I want it to be before I press it into place. Putting that acrylic block on it is going to give it a little bit of weight, and we're going to remove that and take a good look at what we've created today. Look how that gray really comes in and makes that flower really pop from that lattice work background and the white card base. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, please consider giving it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. Check out my playlist to get more crafty inspiration. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at The Delta Crafter, as well as on my website, thedeltacrafter.com. I want to thank you again for joining me for another video on my YouTube channel. Be sure to check out the description box where all the products will be linked. And until next time, everyone, enjoy!